the All In Podcast, the show that explores how the top real estate entrepreneurs have gone all in on their businesses. I'm your host, David Morse, with my co-host, Joe Quattrucci, and I invite you to come along with us as we explore the stories of the most elite professionals in the game today to learn how they went all in and how you and I can do the same. So I just have to ask, are you all in? Hey everyone, so glad that you joined us today for another episode of All In, and I'm super excited to have Sarah Reynolds with us today. Sarah, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here as well.
Sarah, start off by telling us a little bit about who you are and what is your business.
Yeah. So as you said, my name is Sarah Reynolds. I lead the Reynolds Team and the Reynolds Team Network. And so we run a sales team out of the DC metro market. So that means that we service Washington, DC, Virginia, and Maryland. A couple years ago, we expanded to Richmond, Virginia. And then earlier this year, we expanded to Atlanta, Georgia. And so last year, we did right over 10 million in gross commission income. I believe we were number 3 in all of Keller Williams, and number 1 female-led team, which I'm proud of.
That's incredible. And in case the listeners missed that, that wasn't 10 million in volume for sure. That was 10 million in gross commission income.
Correct. Yes. 10 million in gross commission income.
Just an incredible number, Sarah. Congratulations on that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've been able to build it so big? What is the unique value proposition that you offer not only to your clients, but to your staff and to your agents?
Yeah, so I think it all starts with value proposition. I mean, the value that we provide, first of all, to our clients is systems around making sure that we get you top dollar. So our sort of core competence as a team for our sellers, we're 65% sellers. So that's really sort of the core of what we're about. And we focus heavily on getting them the most money possible. And we do that by lots of different marketing systems that we have in place to get them the most money. And then the value proposition we provide our team members is we run an inside sales department and then an outside sales department. Our inside sales department is really the heart of our company. So we have 12 inside sales agents, and their job is to book appointments for our outside sales agents. So they're not outbound sales agents, they're our realtors, basically, is what we call our outside sales agents. And so the value proposition that we offer our team members is coaching and training with me and my entire leadership team. And then also appointments. So it's very different than a lot of teams that you might get leads or scripts and things are great, but our value proposition is a little bit different because we actually provide them appointments.
I think that's fantastic. And then when I'm consulting with some of my top agents and who are building out their teams, you talk about different levels of value, right? There's different pillars of value. A lot of the first one you might say is brand or personality, right? Like, and we see that with a lot of teams. Like, you rub shoulders with this person, you're gonna pick up some stuff, but that can quickly wear off. Then you have another pillar around admin support, and that's definitely something that's scalable. Leads for sure, but like the ultimate pillar of value, and I think you've tapped into that, is that appointments. How did you arrive at that, and like how did you build that out? Like you said, department, I think was the word that you used, like inside sales department. Like, I mean, how did you build that out?
Well, I think it first starts, with the mindset around it. So like when I started building out my team, I started building it out because we had an overflow of business that I couldn't get to. So I was the main listing agent. We had a lot of buyer leads, and I work with my mom, Debbie, and we both were doing listings and selling buyers as well, but it was like an overflow. So then we hired our first buyer's agent. And what I quickly realized from talking to a lot of realtors is that they have the most amazing heart. Like I'm talking, like if you talk to the average realtor, not the average realtor, like a realtor, a lot of times the best ones got in because they want to help people. You have some like different scenarios, but the majority of people you talk to that have the real estate license got in for a desire to help buyers and sellers, right? But they don't have the ability, or they didn't know how to generate the business to then help the buyers and sellers. So what I found was all of these amazing people that had amazing hearts to serve people, but struggled with how to generate business. And I was like, well, if I became very good at generating business, extremely good at generating business. And I was like, okay, if I'm good at that, and then I have these amazing people that have amazing hearts that want to help people, what if we put them together? So like I focus on the generation of business and they focus on doing what they do best, which is serving clients. And that's really how our inside sales department started, was just my desire and passion to create as much business opportunity as possible with people that at their core want to serve buyers and sellers at a high level.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sarah, tell us a little bit about your personal development as a leader. You mentioned your team is number 3 right now in all of Keller Williams for units and GCI, number 1 female-led team. Walk us through that journey of how you've developed as a leader in your organization.
Yeah, we're number 1 year to date, actually, by the way. But that was number 3. That was number 3.
We don't want to take anything away from you.
No, yeah. I mean, it's the first time we made it number 1 for an entire quarter. So, so I was pretty excited, pumped by that. But yeah, last year that was what it was. But I've gone on an amazing journey in leadership, that's for sure. A lot of failing forward moments, a lot of things, going from having a team of like 5 to 10 people to now my organization is over 100 people and we're in 4 different markets. And talk about the leadership journey I've had to take has been incredible. And so going from like me being probably the hardest part for me along the way has been, I have a big passion for my people, and being connected with each of them, like on a really close basis, is something that I've had to learn, that if you want to have a big organization, it's impossible for you to be really connected with 108 people. And so having to learn how to make sure that my people know that I care about them, but at the same time now my organization is ran by 8 executive leadership. I have 8 executive leadership that run the organization. And so having to learn to lead leaders is a totally different topic than what I was. It's one thing to lead people. It's another thing to teach leadership and to teach leaders how to lead. And a lot of it comes from most mega agents are just like really secret control freaks.
Yes. Okay. I think we can all agree on that.
Okay. So, and I'm right there. Okay.
Right.
And so, yeah. So like in a typical situation, like when you're leading people, you can quickly fix it because you can hop in and you can take control and you can fix it. The hard thing about when you're leading leaders is that they will not learn a thing if you just keep coming in and you keep fixing it. And so what I've learned the most probably, and I'm speaking more like the raw Sarah of today, right? That I've learned over the last couple of years is if I keep hopping in and fixing things for my leaders, they're not developing their own leadership. They're not learning how to problem solve. So that means at times I have to sit back and sit on my hands and say, don't let them go through this process and coach them through it, but don't get up and do it. And so that's been what I've learned the most.
I think that's such a great point that you're bringing up, Sarah. Obviously, the millionaire real estate agent talks about leverage. And what I have found in with working with certain people in the past is that they think they have leverage, but what they really have is delegation. And they've delegated a set of tasks or responsibilities to a person without truly letting them take ownership of that lane and run in it. And exactly what you're saying, giving them the freedom to kind of make those little stumbles along the way so they can learn and grow as leaders. And when you do that, and when you're able to successfully develop that person, now you have leverage because they can truly run in their lane.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I love that distinction. I've never heard it said like that. I love that. And that's true. I mean, I think about, my mom put me in charge of our business in 2009. And so that was 11 years ago. And throughout the process of us growing the team and learning, she's been more of an observer at times. And sometimes I've made decisions and then like a couple months later, I realized, oh, that was a bad decision, or I made that mistake there. And her response was like, I saw that you were making that mistake, but I knew that if I hopped in and told you that, you wouldn't actually be able to learn it for next time. And I think that now I'm in the position that she's in, right? And I've learned from her how remarkable it is to go through that process. And yes, at times it's painful, and at times you're going to lose money, but you're not going to be able to have true leverage, like you said, without going through that process. Absolutely. I love that.
I think that's super powerful. Like that, I'm just here like wrapped in my head about like, there's two shifts. The individual agent goes from being a salesperson to when they hire their first person, you've instantly become a leader. There's been a shift into leader. And then you're forced to grow again in leading leaders. And
yes.
I think that's super important. And if we're not growing in that area, then we're not going to see the type of explosive, massive growth that you've seen. Like that.
Yeah. It actually makes me think of, in 2015, I stepped out of production. And no one really prepared me for what that actually means. And so, and I see a lot of rainmakers attempt to do it. And then like 6 months later, 9 months later, you talk to them and they're like, oh, it didn't work. And I'm back out, listing and helping buyers. And I almost was to that position. I actually remember having a conversation with one of my current leaders on my team back then in 2015. And I said, I'm giving it 1 more month. Because that's how much we had in reserves at that time, in terms of like, we had already eaten up about 5 months of reserves because conversion dropped. And no one tells you that. No one tells you, oh, by the way, like you're the brand of the business. And so when you go on appointments, people sign because you're Sarah Reynolds, like, and that they're getting the brand. When you go send someone that's not the brand, you've got to teach them how to script that out, why they should sign with you, with your team versus another agent. And it just made me think, as we're talking this through, that was another sort of moment in my leadership journey of just like, oh, I've got to now learn how to train conversion, which is different than me converting myself. And a lot of people don't realize, okay, conversion is going to dip, but you can't give up. You've got to keep after it and keep training your agents, and it will get better. And eventually they'll be better than you were. But it's good. It takes time.
I picked up on one thing that I didn't want to jump in on there. Like you said, you were 1 month away and you made like this informed decision based on the reserves, like that I'm going to give it 1 more month. Like you were hitting this like ceiling, so to speak. And in order to break through, you had to hang on for just that extra moment. Like, how did you make that decision to hang on outside? Was it just the financial reserves, or
it was
something else?
So one of sort of the keys to our, like my success in terms of our team is like, I don't give up. Like if you look at, a lot of people give up, right? Have you seen that picture of the cave man and they're like cracking the rock, and then it's like
Maybe.
like they were
the diamond.
Yes, and they turn around. Yes, and they turn around right when they're right
we'll
at
link
the
that
diamond.
up in the show notes.
Yes, yes. When they're right at the diamond, they turn around. And that's like, I think about that. Like that's where I was at that point, and it was like I was watching the numbers. I think we were at like 35% conversion. Like so, we were booking all these listing appointments. My inside sales team was rocking it. And they kept coming back with not the listing agreement signed. I mean, it was bad. Yeah. And so it was
can you give someone an idea of like where your team was previously? Like
90%.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
you were the one going on those appointments.
Yes.
And you were the one converting those customers.
Yes. Yeah. And so what ended up happening is that it was both like a financial part, but then it was also just like we're not losers here. 35% is like loser zone to me. And so it was like, okay, we got to turn this around. And so I'll give it 1 more month, and I committed at that point to train every day, to help my listing agents train every day. And I started doing conversion calls, which are calling the seller afterwards to help convert them. And then that way I knew what we were doing right and what we were doing wrong, to where I could focus on what I needed to do for conversion. But the leadership discussion, for whatever reason, made me think of that time in the growth of my business, which was a very critical time.
Yeah.
So.
We're talking obviously about some of the struggles that you've had and some of the challenges that you've overcome. I almost want to take this conversation a whole level deeper and dive into some failure. Obviously, it's super important for us as leaders and individuals to learn from our failures and for other people to be able to learn from our failures. One of the things we say often at KW is fail often, fail fast, and fail forward. So tell us a little bit can you pinpoint one particular failure that you went through that you feel like you were able to take more out of through the learning process than the actual failure itself?
Yeah, and why we say that so much at Keller Williams is because Gary is a firm believer that we learn more from we actually barely learn from our successes.
Right.
We actually learn from our failures. And so I could do hours and hours upon a failure discussion. And I always, to pick one is a little difficult when you have many. But it really almost always comes down to, it's about leadership. So one of my biggest failures was promoting a leader into a leadership position before they proved that they matched the culture of our team and how we describe a leader. So when I was early on like building the leadership of my team, I didn't have every organization actually defines leadership different. And that, I didn't know that at first. And so what ended up happening is I hired a leader of my inside sales department who was only on my team for about 4 months and I promoted him to the leader of the department. And as I said in the beginning, my inside sales team is the heart of our company. So think about that. I promoted someone, they had only been in our organization 3 to 4 months to lead the heart of our company. And what I learned through the process, what ended up happening is it ended up being the worst decision I've ever made at leading my team. And I literally could have lost my entire organization because of that one decision, because he ended up being a major cancer to my organization. And both on the cultural front, as well as just ethically. And I mean, a lot of horrible things happened that I won't go all into detail on today. But the point is that I promoted someone before they first met what we were about. At the time, I didn't know, we didn't have a definition of leadership for the Reynolds team. What came from that failure of promoting someone before they first proved themselves to live up to how we define leadership is that we created a definition of a leader on the Reynolds team. And then now, before we promote someone, they have to show, not just say, they have to show that they exemplify our Reynolds team definition, which is of course, we are a high growth team. In the last 5 years, our average growth year over year has been over 50%. So we are on the upswing of that hockey stick that Gary talks about. And so first and foremost, they've got to be growth oriented and things like that. But the most important part is that they have to be a servant leader. And if they need to care about the team and the people that they lead more than themselves. And they have to show up every day with that type of mindset. And if they don't, they're not bad people. They're just they don't hold what the Reynolds team leader standard is. Right. And so it all comes down to servant leadership for us. But I had to learn the hard way because I promoted someone that didn't fit that. And it almost destroyed us.
Wow. I think that's a newer concept for me, at least, in that, I work with a lot of teams and agents, and I say value proposition, vision, your belief system, your core values. I've never actually sat with someone and defined leadership with them. What does leadership within this grid look like? And if you don't do that, then you do run that risk of moving someone into leadership because of, they're hitting they're hitting metrics, but they're not hitting the most important metric, which is that cultural one over, I think the other thing you mentioned is a sustained period of time.
Yes.
I tell people all the time, anyone can fake something for 3 months, 6 months.
Yes.
There has to be a period of time in which the person's been put under pressure. And you've seen right now, as we record this, we're sitting in a crisis. Crisis reveals character. Crisis reveals the true heart of a leader or a potential leader. And those are words of wisdom right there. So everyone listening, we need to rewind that minute and a half back and really make sure we have a grasp on that.
And I think it's important, like you want your leaders to, as you're growing the team, and I know that this podcast isn't all about leadership, but I guess this conversation is turning into it. But
this can be about anything you want it to be.
Good. I think what's important is like when someone joins your organization, a lot of times, especially when you're smaller, there is a part that they're joining for you, for the leader, right? They're for whatever reason attracted to that leader. And then if you build a leadership team that does not reflect the main leader, which is what I was doing, which is what I did, that's where you're really going to fall short. Because if they're joining you because of what you stand for, right? Like the ethics that you have, the values that you hold, the culture that you sort of create on your team, and then you put people in leadership positions that don't match that, I'm telling you, like that is the fastest way to destroy your company. And that's what I was on my way doing when I made that decision. So don't do it.
Thanks for being vulnerable there. I think one thing that came to mind again was like what you win someone with, you keep them with. Right? Like,
true. So true.
And so if you have a leader in a specific position and they don't match you culturally, vision wise, like they're going to win people to an ideology that does not move the organization in the direction that you want it to.
Yeah, so true.
It's really important.
One of the things we talk about in career visioning when it comes to finding and retaining talent is that vision. And that most people join an organization not to make money, but really most of the time people say they join organizations because they want to be part of something bigger than themselves. They see the vision, the direction the company's moving, and they say, I want to be a part of that team. Tell us a little bit about the vision you've cast for your team, Sarah. Obviously, you've been able to grow it enormously. Walk us through that process of casting the vision to your leaders and getting them on aboard to adopt that same vision or to be attracted to your vision.
Yeah, and I think a critical piece of that with career visioning is making sure, that motivational interview step of career visioning is so important because you're wanting to find out where they're wanting to go in 5 years and making sure that your organization, your team, they can meet where they're wanting to go in the next 5 years. And to be honest, my first sort of vision for where we are going came from those motivational interviews, because to be very honest, I'm not a natural, I'm a natural visionary leader in my head. Okay. I'm not a natural visionary leader in speech. Okay. Cause I'm a
distinction.
Okay, I'm a get it done leader. And so for many years, I would make things happen that was the vision in my head, but I wouldn't say it out loud. Now, you cannot get to a $10 million gross commission income business with that mentality. So over the last few years, I've had to learn, okay, the rest of the team wants to know where we're going. I can't keep it a secret. And so when I sat down with my top team, a lot came from that. So a lot came from those conversations and where they want to go in the next 5 years. And multiple of them wanted to move to different areas. So if you look at our 3-year org chart, if you look at our 5-year organizational chart that shows where we're going, and you say, okay, why are you going to Florida? It all comes down to because, Chris Johnson wants to lead a team in Florida on my team, so it's like I built my vision around a lot of what they're wanting. But what the vision is, are you ready?
We're ready.
Okay.
Ready.
We will be in 10 major metro cities in the next 5 years, helping 1,000 families a month. So
fantastic.
The goal is helping 100 families a month in each of the major metro cities. And so we are in 2 right now. And so we have 8 more to go.
So for everyone that's in a major metro city, listening to this, if you're interested, I'm sure there's a conversation opportunity.
Yeah, we have an amazing chief growth officer that is having those conversations every single day, finding our next sort of expansion partners. We just launched Atlanta a couple months ago, and we already in 8 weeks, we've already booked like 42 listing appointments for our team Atlanta. Wow. And the team leader down there is saying that that no other team is doing what we're doing during this pandemic. So it's pretty exciting.
That's great. So I have to ask selfishly, when you come into Phoenix.
I do like Phoenix. Yeah. Who do you have for me there?
Hey, we'll talk offline.
Okay. That is a major metro city, that's for sure.
Hey, there's a lot happening here.
Yes,
so,
that fits that box.
It just occurred to me too that for everyone that's listening that's not part of KW, because we have a lot of people inside and outside. When we talk about career visioning, it's simply a process, a very in-depth hiring process that we teach Keller Williams associates how to go through as they're bringing talent into their world. And so I'm more than happy to have that conversation if you want more information about that. But just think about it as an intense hiring process.
I wasn't planning on doing a plug for this, but today I literally just got done recording Empire Building, which is our podcast that's launching June 1st. And we just did a 2-part series on the hiring process, going into detail about that. So if you're interested in that, be on the lookout for when that launches.
I love it. Well, since we're on that subject, can you tell us about Empire Builders?
Yes. So I have 3 of my closest friends. Keller Williams approached us about starting a podcast called Empire Building, and it's basically about building an empire. So we have a good mix with the 4 of us of different stages in our businesses, and we are talking very all of us, it's very important for us to be transparent and vulnerable about what it's truly like building an empire. It's not all roses.
Not all Maseratis and
yes,
and
no,
jets, like,
no. And so it's all about, though, the process of building a big business. But then we also are tying in a big belief at Keller Williams and on the podcast is that you want to have a big business, but you also want to have a big life. So all of us are moms that lead the podcast. And so we're sharing that little bit of a different perspective that you don't hear a lot, which is how to have a big business, but at the same time, even bigger life. So that's what that's about.
That's so important. And that's one of the things that made me really want to get in touch so that we could all talk, because Joe and I believe the same thing. Like, we want to know how people have pushed their chips, so to speak, all in on their lives and businesses.
Yes.
I'm a dad, I'm a husband. And so I'm very interested by how other people are managing that counterbalance and tension in their lives. Would you mind jumping into that a little bit with us, since we kind of
So I mean, earlier we talked about leverage, and I have a 7-year-old, a 4.5-year-old, and yesterday an 11-month-old baby. Wow. And I had 3 babies that I carried and and had all while building my empire, right? All while building the business. And talk about leverage. I mean, you have to learn true leverage. Like you said earlier, when you have a young family, especially when you have, having a baby as well as like feeding a baby is a part-time job. And so all of that in place. And so the key part is surrounding yourself by amazing people, right? That understand you, that understand how to help support you, and at the same time also have amazing people on the home front. I have an awesome, amazing, supportive husband, but then also an amazing nanny that helps me. And a lot of females don't like to talk about the leverage that's needed at home. But to run a big business, you do have to have leverage at home too. And it's something that isn't talked about in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And so it can be confusing because like a lot of female leaders want to grow big businesses, but then they are struggling at home. And so I shared on the stage at Family Reunion, that the P&L can look a little bit different when you're a young mom, because you might have to have extra support, extra salaries that a man with a stay-at-home wife, no offense to that, right? But that's different than a female.
Set of life.
Yeah, it's different. Right. Yeah. And so like they don't need to have as much support because they have that support system already. Whereas me, along with lots of female leaders, and the same can be along with male leaders, that I know a lot of single dads that run big businesses. And I mean, they have to have extra support too. So leaning into leverage, both at home and in your business, is crucial to building a big business.
And I just want to point out something I heard you say, Sarah, which is that it's so important to be aware of who you're surrounding yourself with. As the old saying goes, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend your time with. And so being aware of who are the closest people in my world, and where do I want to go in my business, and who are the people I need to start surrounding myself by. And of course, I don't even mean that just necessarily in physically who am I with, but what is the media I'm ingesting? What is the news I'm listening to? What information am I allowing into my brain? And I kind of consider all that to be part of, you are the sum of everything that you let into your head.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what, I mean, getting through, like, as you said earlier, like, we're recording this during this pandemic. And I've been telling my team almost every day, like, eliminate distractions, turn off the news. Like, it's important to be informed, but we can't change anything that's going on right now. Right. And so it's so important to be protecting our mindset. That's the most important thing we have. And I love that distinction of, yes, it's important to look at the 5 people that you're closest to, but what are the 5 things that are getting into your mind? Right. And a lot of people don't talk about it like that. And I love that.
And I think, it comes down, I think, to awareness. And I don't think that, sometimes people realize what an impact those people and that information has on their decision-making process. The way that it prepares your brain so that the next time you face a challenge, all of that information, whether it's good, whether it's bad, or somewhere in the middle, is all going to lead up to the decision that you end up making.
Yep, absolutely.
So you're really going to be cognizant about, I want to be around people and I want to listen to information that's going to advance me in my career, advance me personally, advance my relationships, my spirituality, my health, etc.
Yep. No, and that's where, I mean, I've had a big change with that in the last couple of years, because I have always surrounded myself by big business thinkers. And that has helped my business in a great deal. I have not always surrounded myself by big business thinkers and moms and wives, and that have a desire to not only have that big business, but also the big life to go with it. And so, to be honest, up until a couple years ago, I was only focused on the big business, and not that I was not focused on my family. Of course I was having a family, but I wasn't surrounding myself by people that were going through the same things as I was. We're trying to juggle how to be a good mom and at the same time have a big business. And that's been a crucial thing for me, was getting into a different room, surrounding myself by people that are that also are moms and wives and want to be as good of a mom as they are as good of a business leader. That's been a change for me in the last couple of years, and I'm a better person for it. So that's for sure.
That's great. And a better business leader and a better mom, and the fact that those aren't at odds with each other. They're not mutually exclusive. And selfishly, like, I'm running through so much of this in my head because I have a wife who runs a business in a different industry space. And some of the changes that we've had to make and pivot since this pandemic hit, with bringing the boys home and what that looks like, and the importance of, actually, when I left to record today, she was on a call with some of her other business leaders, business friends, just talking through this very thing. So this is a super important subject. I mean, thanks for getting vulnerable with us about this, and also just making sure that we're aware of these conversations, because single dads,
well, and our dads of daughters, after we spoke at family reunion with Gary on the panel, I had more messages from dads of daughters than I did from even females. Because I mean, we're talking about things that weren't really talked about that much before. And so I think it's just critical to have these conversations. And I think, the All In podcast is all about being all in on your business, right? But then also being all in with life, having the big life too.
Absolutely.
Especially in an industry. It's funny because especially in an industry that's, there's more, I believe there's more.
Oh, it's 65% female.
Way more females than males.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So just this whole subject is, we're all going to be better for it as we continue to propel that forward. That's that's progress.
Yep.
So, man, this is good.
Let me ask you this, Sarah. Has real estate success, has that opened up doors for you in any other industries or any other business ventures that you'd like to tell us about today?
Absolutely. So, So I'm a very focused person. So there's been lots of business ventures that have come at me, but very few do I say yes to. And so the ones, yeah. So the ones that I've said yes to have been any ancillary businesses. So I own a title company. I'm about to start our mortgage company. But then also we started an organization called Amplify. And that's part of, it's basically the mission of Amplify is to amplify the voices of women in business around the world. And it's all about sort of what we were just talking about, but creating that safe space for female leaders that lead huge businesses. And it's not just real estate specific. So that's one business that I'm part of, but my main focus is on the Reynolds Team network. And so I don't have a lot of the top 10 teams also own lots of offices and different they have different businesses. And I do have other businesses, but my main focus has always been the Reynolds Team. And until God tells me otherwise, that's what it's going to be. So.
Smart approach.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Focus. It's important.
So we ask every guest on our show the same 3 questions, and I'd love to dive into that with you in 3, 2, 1 action. Since this is an action-related podcast, who's the biggest business influence in your life?
The biggest business influence in my life. Okay. So that's a hard one. Okay. I have to say, can I do two biggest?
I don't want to let her off the hook.
I know. Okay. So, well, you're going to let me off the hook. Okay.
We're going to let you off the hook.
We'll take two. We'll take two. Tell us what you got.
Okay. So number 1 is a guy named Craig Proctor. Have you ever heard that name?
Yes.
Okay. So Craig Proctor, it was the very first person that ever hired an inside sales agent. So he hired an ISA in the mid 90s. And a lot of what I learned when I first got into, when I was put in charge of my business, I needed a coach, and there wasn't really much coaching then. Now there's so much, but I did so much research to try to find, okay, who is a coach that has actually done it? And I found Craig Proctor, and I learned his sort of system with the inside sales agent and outside sales agents. And that's how I built the foundation of our business. So I can't go on this podcast and not mention his name, because if you look at sort of the way our businesses run, it's like his model of the inside sales agent and the outside sales agent came from him. And I'm a big believer in having integrity in terms of giving credit where credit's due. And so it wasn't my idea, it was his idea, and I've been following that. And then over the last 3 years, it's got to be Gary Keller. Well, really, I could say Gary Keller in the beginning too, because Millionaire Real Estate Agent had such a big impact on my business. And I read and studied all those models, and the 36 Touch I put into place my very first year of leading the team. But I would say it's a little bit different over the last few years, because Gary's become like my friend and a mentor to me, and has been an email and a call away when I've had struggles at times, and talk about the leadership journey that we started the podcast with. A lot I've relied on him and his influence on me as a leader. Talk about someone that is a servant leader. And I don't even know if he would say that about himself. But I don't know if you've heard this, but he says he's going to have realtor on his tombstone.
Yeah.
Think about it. Like, he started the largest brokerage in America, and yet that's he wants on his tombstone. That's at the core of what we do, right? Is be a realtor, the fiduciary duty that we have to buyers and sellers. And no matter how big this company gets, he does not stray from that. He does not stray from who he serves, which is the realtor, right? And just the lessons that I've learned from him on leadership have been huge, 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 huge. So
I'm really glad we gave you 2 answers on that one. That was
fantastic. Both great choices. And I hope we get to have you back here again, because with Craig Proctor and the ISA, like, we could do an entire episode just on the ISA.
Oh yes.
Department.
Oh yeah.
There's so much question around that. So we're definitely going to have you back, and we're going to talk.
Well, it would also be great. I could have my lead ISA now is just remarkable. So he leads that department, and he would be happy to be on here with me.
We'll have to do that.
Perfect. Yeah. All right, Sarah, question number 2. What's the most influential book you've read in your career?
Okay. Oh my goodness.
This is one you can only have one. Just one.
Okay. So I have to say the one that, oh man, that's a hard one. Okay. It's got to be right now. I'm on my 4th read of The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham.
Yep.
And I'm sort of saying that, but I don't know if that you said of my career. That's a more recent book that's had a big impact on me. Because one of the things, like, I get in my head a lot. And so, like, one of the things that he says in the book is that you know your business better than anyone, but the problem is that we don't create enough thinking time as leaders. And so he talks about taking time to journal and taking time to have that thinking time. And how important that is on our businesses. And so that's been a true total game changer over the last few months of me reading that book, and the E-Myth Revisited.
Oh, you stuck it in there.
I love that that was your answer, Sarah. When we talk about, getting new agents into activities and even agents that have experience, the thinking time is huge. That's such a key important portion when you're creating your plan. It's almost like you've got to plan time to plan. You've got to be able to give yourself some time to think. Yes.
And he has great questions of like what to ask yourself and what to be thinking about. And I mean, it's been really, really good. Really good.
Maybe you guys can help me with this. I remember hearing about some CEO from one of the Fortune 100 or Fortune 50 companies. And he tells this story quite often about how someone came in, barged into a board meeting to have him sign an important document. And supposedly he had time to look at this document, everything like that. And yet he hadn't had time to think it over. And he put his hand in the air and he said, my next scheduled time to think, and he gave a block of time later that afternoon. He said, you can come back and see me after that thinking block.
Wow.
And he tells this story all the time, and I can't for the life of me remember who this is. It's going to kill me.
I've never heard that story.
I'm going to link it in the show notes. I heard it somewhere, and I was like, that's amazing. And that's for me where like the light bulb kind of came on, and exactly what you're saying. Like,
yes,
you need time to
think. You have to have thinking time. And I think that's probably the most under talked about thing that we need is thinking time.
Definitely. Well, last question for you before we let you go. So All In Podcast is about action, taking action, pushing the chips in, going all in. What is one thing that our listeners can do right now when they hit stop on this podcast episode that they can implement in their life or their business right now that will propel them forward?
Honestly, especially, I mean, we're recording this during the pandemic, and I said this, I spoke at Gary Keller Mastermind to the top leaders in our company 2 days ago. And I told everyone, like, you are not above getting on the phone. Like, pick up the phone. Like, I don't care how big of a business you have. I don't care what's going on. You need to be every day having 2 hours of lead generation time. And if you have not had your 2 hours of lead generation time and you're listening to this podcast, what you need to do is you need to when you stop listening, you need to pick up the phone and dial your database. And the best way to build a massive business is to keep that at the core of what you do, is making sure that you continually, you are never too big for your britches to make phone calls, as my Southern Meemaw says.
That is just the most perfect advice we can give to our listeners today. I love that. Last question for Sarah. Where can our listeners go to find more information about the Reynolds Team and about Amplify, should they want to find out more about that and how to get involved?
Yeah, so follow me. I'm at my 5,000 Facebook friends limit. So you can follow me. My Facebook name is Sarah Reynolds Aji. So my married name is OJI, Aji. And then I'm also on Instagram, Sarah Reynolds Aji also. And then Amplify, go to amplifyevent.com. I have all the links for Reynolds Team on all my social media. And then, but Amplify, it's amplifyevent.com.
Awesome. And I think Joe and I have a mission to break our way into that 5,000 friends. So I don't know who's getting displaced, but we're gonna have to figure out a way to get on that.
I do need a displacing plan.
Awesome, Sarah. Thank you so much for being with us today. This has been such a fun conversation. Getting to know you. You've just brought a ton of value. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to hear Empire Builders. And we're going to link to everything you've talked about in the show notes. So for all of our listeners out there, thank you for joining us today. Go out, play all in, and get on that phone.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the All In Podcast. We want to invite you to find all of today's resources from our show page at aipodcast.co. We also ask that you take just 1 minute to leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. This is how we grow and how we're able to bring you the best content each and every week. Now go play all in.